that plane, don't know.
Finally, we have taken back our oil.
Young man, there's no need to feel down. Huh?
Ponte a bailar.
No crazy going on, Please, please, please. Yes, please. Yes, please. Peace for the better. Peace for the better. Sweet boss, sweet boss, sweet boss, sweet boss, 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 sweet boss, 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 sweet boss, boss, boss.
And Cilia Maduro, the president, confirming that they are right now on a U.S. warship known as the USS Iwo Jima. He's describing how this all went about. He said this, quote, "We had nobody killed." He said it was amazing. He says, "I think we had nobody killed, I have to say, because a couple of guys were hit," he said, "but they came back and they're supposed to be in pretty good shape." So we're going to hear officially from President Trump at 11 a.m. Blaine, to you first. Delta Force. It's an elite special forces unit of the U.S. Army. It carried out this capture of Maduro. How much planning would have been needed to really successfully execute an operation like this on foreign soil, according to the president? Yes, it was very successful here. What more are you learning about the operation itself?
Yep, so very clean strike. Delta Force trains for this type of mission all the time, but not this exact mission. So when they got the call that this is what they were going to be doing, then they would do rehearsals just on this scenario. And then it gets into the very detailed tactical planning or operational planning of, okay, how are we going to induce chaos ahead of the insertion of our forces? How do we blind them with command and control? That's the hits you saw in the airport, the strikes of key leaders in the Venezuelan defense structure, and then leading up to the actual takedown of Maduro, his wife, making sure that they're safely what we call exfilled or extracted, and then moving them right offshore onto the deck of the Iwo Jima where they're being held right now. But this is, we practice this all the time because so many parts and pieces have to come together perfectly down to the second. And the fact that we didn't lose anybody, we probably have a few injuries. Just kudos to our forces because, this is as hard as it possibly gets.
Yeah, I mean, Blaine, the president seemed to indicate there were some injuries with some of these personnel who carried out this operation, but he said no one was killed carrying out this operation. U.S. forces, I'm talking about. Daniel, to you, though, let's talk about the stability of the country, what happens next. There are very prominent opposition figures. Edmundo Gonzalez, the candidate. President-elect, who had to flee the country, threats against his safety and his life from the Maduro regime. Marina Corina Machado, she won the Nobel Peace Prize in October, another leading opposition candidate. Can you envision a Venezuela in the near term led by either of them?
Yes. So what's going to happen in the next few hours? First, President Trump's statement is the most important thing that's going to happen next. Second, I don't think that this just happened in isolation. Obviously, the Department of State, Marco Rubio, the Department of War, they signaled what was going to happen. They threatened Maduro. I'm sure that they spoke with members inside the Maduro regime. The question is, did this happen because members of the Maduro regime turned Maduro in? And then what's happening next is that they're going to take power and there's going to be a transition? Or is this just a switch in the cards of who's in power? Hopefully there will be a democratic transition because now they know Maduro can take them out. Sorry, Trump can take them out too. So what comes next is hopefully Edmundo Gonzalez becomes the president in effect.
Saw what happened with the military and law enforcement operation in Venezuela.
Well, my first reaction, Rob, was to say, praise the Lord and thank you, President Trump. A lot of people may not make the connection as to why this matters to us in the Middle East. What they don't know is that Hezbollah is very active in Venezuela. There has been a 20-year partnership between Iran and Venezuela under both the two previous dictators. The ties are deep. And Hezbollah operates in 12 different countries throughout South America. It is not just a threat in the Western Hemisphere. It is a threat to the Middle East. So for the president to go after Venezuela not only deals with narco-terrorism and the many deaths of Americans who are killed by the poison of drugs, it is going to make life for those of us living in the Middle East much better, much safer to take Maduro out, to recognize that Hezbollah is active here, targeting not just Jewish people in all over South America, but using those tentacles to ultimately reach into the United States. This is good news for America, good news for the world.
So with Maduro out, Trump said about, when he was asked, well, now what? What's going to happen? And this is what Trump said about who will run things over there in Venezuela.
We are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela.
All right, so you've got two parts of the world now where America is going to have a tough time, but going in there and potentially rebuild. Venezuela and where you are in Gaza.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but there's no other nation on earth that can do it. There's no other nation on earth that will do it. President Trump's leadership has brought a new level of peace to the Middle East. Over the past couple of months during the ceasefire, Rob, this is the first time since I've been here in just about a year that we haven't had to dodge ballistic missiles, rockets, UAVs, and all manner of things that were coming against us. That's because when you defeat the Iranian
narcotics cartel. So what are the implications of Washington's actions? This is Inside Story.
His capture by U.S. Special Forces ends 13 years in power after succeeding Hugo Chavez. Maduro was declared the preferred successor by the gravely ill Chavez and narrowly won the subsequent election. As the economic crisis worsened, opposition demonstrations were met with brutal force, with leaders jailed. In July 2024, Maduro was re-elected as president in a vote that the US and other Western nations say was rigged. Protests continued, but in the end it was the intervention of the US which brought him down. Despite its vast oil riches, Venezuela now finds itself facing an uncertain future, without a president and an economy spiraling out of control. Paul Ging, Al Jazeera, for Inside Story.
Halo Bapak-Bapak dan
The U.S. calls these actions self-defense against narcotics traffickers coming from the country and doesn't rule out the possibility of land strikes. The Venezuelan government calls it an act of war.
Es una agresión en toda la línea.
A war in which they have no interest in, to the point where their president Nicolas Maduro is doing a dance in public that literally calls for peace, not war. Meanwhile, legal experts, and even some of Trump's usual allies, question the legality of the boat strikes, saying they could be violating international law by killing people without any proof of criminal wrongdoing.
You have to accuse them of something, you have to present evidence.
For the first time in years, it feels like the Caribbean is teetering on the edge of a military conflict between the United States and Venezuela. But why, out of all the hotspots in the world, is the US focusing its anger on this one poor Latin American nation? It's a confrontation that's been building for decades.
Miles from Venezuela's coast, 8 warships, a nuclear submarine, over 4,000 Marines. Officially, it's about drugs and refugees. But here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Washington may actually be preparing to invade. Why now? Today, we're unpacking the hidden evidence, from collapsing oil pipelines to China's secret deals to the quiet troop buildups that prove why the U.S. might be closer than ever to war in its own backyard. Today's crisis didn't appear overnight. It's been decades in the making. And to really understand why Venezuela and America are now on the edge of open conflict, we need to rewind. It all started in 1999. when Hugo Chavez stormed into power promising to defy the United States. By 2002, the relationship had already collapsed. The CIA even backed a coup that briefly removed Chavez from office, a warning that U.S. intervention in Venezuela wasn't a conspiracy theory, but a reality that would haunt the next 20 years. Chavez built his entire image around defying Washington, constantly painting the U.S. as an imperialist enemy. His successor, Nicolas Maduro, doubled down on that message, turning being anti-American into Venezuela's official brand. The result? A spiral of retaliation. Venezuela seized oil fields, the U.S. hit back with rising sanctions, and the 2000s turned into a slow-motion collision course that was bound to explode sooner or later. By the mid-2000s, Washington had Venezuela in its crosshairs. First came the labels, failing counter-narcotics partner. Then came the sanctions, targeting officials and allies of Hugo Chavez. But things escalated under Maduro. In 2019, the U.S. made a move straight out of a spy novel. It declared opposition leader Juan Guaido the real president of Venezuela and openly backed an attempted coup. The plan failed, but the message was clear. Every crisis, every sanction was dressed up as democracy promotion or drug control. But behind the curtain, it was always the same three motives: oil, power, and blocking Russia, China, and Iran from gaining a foothold in America's backyard. By 2025, Maduro had forced his way into a third term after a blatantly rigged election that saw thousands of opponents thrown in jail. The world condemned it, but Maduro didn't care. Now, Venezuela was completely isolated. No diplomatic ties left, no trust on either side. And that's when the real danger set in. Every supply ship, every military advisor, every frozen bank account turned into a potential spark. The entire U.S.-Venezuela relationship had become a high-stakes chess match, and one wrong move could set off
great success and asserting that Maduro and his... Ladies and gentlemen, today, January 3rd, 2026, the world is witnessing an unprecedented geopolitical event in modern history. The U.S. military has launched a large-scale military attack on Venezuela, resulting in the arrest of President Nicolás Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores. President Donald Trump directly announced this information on the social media platform Truth Social, calling it a great success and asserting that Maduro and his wife have been arrested and removed from Venezuelan territory. This is not only a sudden military operation, but also the culmination of months-long pressure campaigns by a second Trump administration. First, the main developments of the attack unfolded in the early hours of January 3rd, 2026, local time in Venezuela, when I followed reports confirming that U.S. forces launched a swift and precisely coordinated large-scale military operation targeting key sites across northern Venezuela, particularly in and around the capital, Caracas. The strikes began around 2 a.m., lasting less than 30 minutes, according to multiple sources like the Associated Press and Reuters, though some accounts extended the intense phase up to an hour or more as special operations teams executed their ground objectives. Residents in Caracas described a terrifying sequence of at least 7 to 10 powerful explosions that lit up the night sky, sending shockwaves through the city and prompting many to rush into the streets in panic. Videos circulating on social media, later verified by outlets such as NPR and CBS News, showed plumes of thick black smoke rising from major military installations, including Fuerte Tiuna, the country's largest military complex, widely believed to be Maduro's residence, and the La Carlota military air base right in the heart of the capital. Eyewitnesses and opposition spokespeople like David Smolansky, representing opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, detailed additional targets: the strategic port of La Guaira on the Caribbean coast, where docks and containers were heavily damaged, communications antennas on Cerro El Volcan, a hill overlooking the city, and even the Higuerote airport further east. Russian-made Buk M2E